Have you ever asked yourself, either as a program manager or as a project manager or even as a project member, how do you actually record risk items or risk contents or even risk records in a project environment? Don't look elsewhere. In this video, I'm going to take you through step by step all the sections that you need to complete for a risk register. So let's dive in. I've also created a template on the risk register, which you can also download for free from the link in the description below. Hello and welcome to my channel. My name is Actionee. I'm a certified program and project manager. So in this video, I'm going to take you through the most important or critical document that you need in a project. It's called risk register. So let's move on. So you have just joined the project, and in this case, I want to focus on a project manager, or even a project member, or even a program manager. So as a project manager, you have joined the project, or you've initiated the project, you've started the project. So you might be wondering as to how am I going to record and capture any of the identified risks in a project. So that question is very understandable. And also one of the questions which I've also seen most project managers asking is, how do you record these risk items, and when do you start the recording of these risk items? I can tell you, the moment you start to be involved in the project, either as a project manager or even a project member, that is the moment you need to start recording the risk items. I know someone might be arguing that it's too early. It's not too early. The moment the mandate is given to run the project, of course, I agree. During the startup phase, during the startup phase, you may not have so much in terms of your documentation. But my advice is, you now need to record the risks at high level. Then as you move on to initiation of the project, you then expand the risks so that you put more details. So the moment you are assigned to a project as a project manager or project member, that is the point you now need to start picking end risks for the project and then record them. So with that information, you might be asking, how does it look like the risk register? Let's cover that in the next section. I hope you have enjoyed the video so far. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe button, and the notification button so that you are the first person to be notified each time a new video is uploaded on this channel. It will also help the channel to grow. It will also help the channel to produce more videos like this one. So in this section, now we're going to cover the risk register sections. But one thing I need to let you know is during this day and age, we now have so many electronic or softwares that are used to capture these risk registers. But for some reason, or depending on the type of project, you are not willing to use any software, or you're not willing to use any risk-specific software, I would advise you can also still use your Microsoft Excel document, the Google Docs document on Excel. It can still work. The structure is simplified and it's still the same. So I'm going to take you through one by one. So number one, on the risk register, there must be an identifier. You might be asking, Oscar, what is the purpose of this identifier? The purpose of the identifier of a risk is for you to be able to make reference either in future or in the current period. Let me give you a good example. Normally, this identifier can be any free type of text that you need. For example, it might be alphanumeric, it could be only just a numeric, or it could be only alpha, and so on and so forth. But what is more important is for you to be able to assign an identifier to a risk. Throughout the project documentation, you no longer need to put all the description for that risk. What you only need to do is to quote that number. Risk number ABC123 is now closed, or risk number ABC567 is still open or is work in progress. So you'll be able to reference that risk from day one, you start the project, all the way even post project closure. So identification or identifier of a risk in a risk register is very important. Feel free to use any kind of identification that you need, depending on the type of project, depending on the industry. But from a project management point of view, you should be able to identify any risks throughout the project. So the second item is the risk author. So what do we mean by this? The risk author is actually the person who was able to identify the risk or who was able to bring the risk to the attention of the project manager. So the author of the risk must be recorded. It might be the project manager, it might be project member, it could be even external members from the project or external stakeholders from the project. It could be from the sponsor, it could be from board members, project board members, but there must be a way to record the author of the risk. The importance of having that is, assuming you need more information, assuming you want to fine-tune the description of the risk, assume you want to fine-tune the other additional columns you're going to look into for the risk, then that author is the go-to person. What is it they've seen? Why are they thinking it's a risk? What is going to be the impact of that risk? How important is it? How close is it? We call it proximity. How close is that risk? And so on and so forth. So the third part is the date at which the risk was registered. It's not normal for you to record anything, whether it's a risk, it's an issue, or whatever you want to record in the project without putting a date. So the date is very important for you to know when was this risk registered, when was it identified and registered, when was it identified and logged into the risk register. That also helps for you to make an assessment in terms of the expected implication of the risk. There are some you might identify during the start of the project as high risk, but as you move further into the project implementation, they become low risk. So you can also use the date for that kind of aging. If it was phase 1 or phase 2, but it's no longer a risk in phase 3 and 4, then definitely you can downgrade it or you can even close it. So the date at which the risk was registered is very, very important. It must be part of your risk register. I've also created a template on the risk register, which you can also download for free from the link in the description below. So the next one is the risk category. So you might be asking, what is the risk category? If you want to understand more about risk category, I've done a video on risk categories. You can also check it on my channel. It will give you a better view and understanding of what are the different types or categories of risks. However, in a nutshell, let me just give you a brief on some of them. It could be an environmental risk. It has to be recorded, which means what you are saying is the project can be affected by any change in the environment that will affect the project objective, which is the actual definition of a risk. It could be economical. Say, for example, you are working on a new product and due to some probably inflation, high inflation, it's no longer logical for you to proceed with that creation of that product. Obviously, you have to stop. So it has got economical impact on it. So you can also record a category. I'm not going to go through most of these categories. There are so many. It could be also technical. There are some projects which I've seen due to some technical issues, they ended up being stopped or even disbanded. So it's another category. It can also be regulatory. You can also have a risk category of a regulatory means or category or section. Then as you record your risks in the register, you can pick that. So those are some of the examples of categories that you should expect for a risk register. There are so many of them depending on the industry, depending on the type of the project, and even depending on the timing of the project. For example, we all know that we went through the COVID era. Most of the projects which were there, one of the categories which ended up being created by us who were in the field during that time is the health category. So we're also putting a category for health or pandemic. So you can also put it as a category. So I'd advise that you do a proper analysis of your type of project, industry of your project, and also the environment, surrounding environment of the project, your organization, for you to come up with these categories. I've seen some other organizations, they already have these categories, so you might not bother yourself so much into researching what exactly do you need for the categories in a project. You just have to take them where they are stored, and then you add them to risk register. I hope you have enjoyed the video so far. If you are new to the channel, don't forget to click the like button, subscribe button, and the notification button so that you are the first person to be notified each time a new video is uploaded on this channel. It will also help the channel to grow. It will also help the channel to produce more videos like this one. next section of a risk register is a risk description. Let me tell you, I've seen so many project managers, so many program managers, so many project members making a mistake when it comes to describing a risk. You should be able to understand exactly how to describe a risk. If you want to learn more about how to describe a risk, I've also done a video on how to describe a risk. A risk is normally described in three, sections. The first section is the cause of the risk. It must be very clear what is going to cause the risk. Then you also describe the event. What do you mean by event? After the cause, what is going to happen? Okay, so that is the event. Then the effect or impact. You also need to describe the impact. I'll give you an example. The first example is a bad one. The second one is the good one. I've seen so many project managers. You ask them one simple question. What is the risk here? They'll just tell you project will be delayed. I think you can now agree with me now that that is not the correct way of describing a risk in a project. They'll just tell you the project will be delayed. But remember, I told you about three sections: cause, event, and impact. So, based on this bad example, the project manager is only talking about the effect. He's forgetting about other things. But a good example now is you describe a cause, you describe the event, and then you describe the effect. I can give you a good example. If this employee is going to leave the project, we are going to have lack of skills, and then our product output is going to be poor quality. Okay. Let me give you an example again. If the current government is going to change, we are going to have a new government that might recommend us to stop the project. So that is the risk. The risk is you have the cause, which is change of government. If that happens, they are going to request you to stop the project. If the project happens, if the stoppage is directed, then it means you're going to affect the end product you're supposed to produce. So there are so many examples, but the takeaway from this section is a risk must be defined from cause, event, and impact. If you don't do it in your risk description, then know that your risk description is incomplete. So the next section you should always consider in your risk register is the probability, the impact, and the event value. This is very simple. You also need to capture how likely is the event going to happen, how likely is the risk going to happen. So that's what we mean by probability. Normally it is on a scale of 0 to 1. So 0 is something that you know it's never happened. 1, it's certain that it's going to happen. Anything in between, there's a lot of judgment, there's a lot of experience that you're incorporating into that. You might say the probability of this risk happening is 0.7, which means 70% chance. So based on the probability scale that you're getting, you can also start thinking about mitigating factors. You also look at the impact. Normally, if you look on the screen, there is a probability impact diagram or table that is normally used for risk assessment. This is also in a different video. You can also check my channel. Then the next section, which is expected to be part of your risk register, is proximity. So you might be wondering, what is proximity? Proximity is how close is the risk in terms of the project progress. I'll give you an example. When you are starting a project, you might have a high risk that most of the project members will not join the project. So how close is it? It's very close. You might not be able to get enough members to join the project. So it's very close. But you find that in some projects, as you progress from project initiation, probably to testing or to quality checks, you normally find that you now have a full-fledged team of project members. So therefore, the risk of not having members is now downgraded, probably from high to low. And also the proximity is also being reduced. Okay? Which means you are no longer expecting this to happen very soon. If it's going to happen, it's not going to be now. It has to be some other future. So you increase the proximity of the risk happening. So the next section should be the risk response categories. There are so many responses that can come up in terms of how to react when a risk has happened or when it has become an issue. This is what we are calling risk response category. If you want to understand and appreciate more on what are the risk responses that you need to consider, I've also done a video on risk responses categories. You can also have a look at it. It's very enriched in terms of information on how you're supposed to respond to certain risks. So, from my experience, from my projects, I normally call the collective risk responses categories as rafts. So you might be asking yourself, what does it stand for? I'm not going to take you through because that's why I created a different video on that. It's quite a long topic to discuss on this video. Otherwise, this video is going to be very long. So in terms of responses, you can even avoid the risk, which means you have some mitigating factors or actions that you put in place to make sure that the risk doesn't happen. Okay? Say, for example, there's a risk that you're going to have knowledge gap. Obviously, you can just train your people so that there's no knowledge gap. They are avoiding it totally. There are also some cases where you have to transfer the risk. I've seen it in most of the banking environments. If they want to fund a certain project, probably most of these infrastructural projects from government, one bank may not be able to foot the funding. So the probability of the project not being concluded might be very low, but if it happens, it will bring down the whole bank. So what they normally do is they ask other members to join them. What is called syndicated lending. They will ask the other members or other banks to join them. Then they distribute the amount of money, which means if it was, say, for example, a 4 billion project, see, the leading bank is only going to provide 1 billion. Then the other 3 billion is going to come from the other banks. So what they've done there, they've also transferred the risk. What they've done there is to share the risk. So this is an example on how you can share a risk in an environment. I'll give you a good example on how a risk can be shared in a project environment. You can also spread it across different partners. So the next item is avoiding. So the last example I want to give, because I don't want to go so much into this risk responses, is also you can also avoid it totally, or you can even accept it. If it happens, you accept. There's nothing that you can do. For example, a death of a project member, there's nothing you can do to resuscitate the person. So obviously you accept, and then you look for replacement. So those are some of the categories you are expected to be capturing in your risk register. The next section you should have in your risk register is the risk status. I have to emphasize on this. Every risk throughout the project phases, it will go through different statuses. For example, it might be open, work in progress, or closed, okay, or even reopened. So you must make sure that in your register, you are also capturing the risk status. The risk status is very important, so that you are able even to filter on the risks which are no longer an issue, which means they have been closed, or some of the risks which are also upgraded. So the status of the risk record or risk item in the risk register is very important. Then the next section in a risk register must be the risk owner. You might be asking yourself, what does it mean? There must be someone who should be consistently be monitoring the risk throughout the project. It could be project manager, it could be project team leads, or it could be a project team member. But you must assign someone who is going to own that risk, to make sure that whatever has been described, whatever has been agreed as mitigation, they are applying that to make sure they avoid, or to make sure they manage the risk. Then the last but not least is the risk actionee. What do you mean by risk actionee? This is, remember I was talking about mitigating factors, I was talking about risk responses. So this is the person who is responsible to action the risk in case it materializes. For example, you said you've agreed one of the risk actions to take is to transfer. So if it happens, you want someone who's going to do the actual action of transferring the risk to the other party. It could be sharing. You also need that risk actionee to be able to act on that in order for you to be able to share the risk, in order for you to be able to transfer the risk, and so on and so forth. Even if it means you have to avoid it, this Actionee is also responsible for that. So it must be part of your risk register. That is very, very important to consider. If you want to create more videos like this one, or you want some additional information on what we've discussed on this video, you can reach out to me, or you can let me know in the comment section below. Thank you for watching.